Good evening, everybody. My name is Jesse. Welcome to Dirty Leather. Another episode of Dirty Leather on this fantastic Sunday evening. Very cold Sunday evening as well. Thank you very much for tuning us within, and just bear with me for a moment while I get everything set up with regards to the audio. It might not sound the greatest. It might not sound very good, but the work. So I should be very audible now, thankfully. Uh, I'm just trying to set everything up. This is a new phone, a little bit of some new equipment. So we're just trying to get everything in order. But thank you very much for tuning in with me on this Sunday evening. I very much appreciate it, every single one of you. So we're going to get right into the show. So this week starts what actually today starts the winter meetings down in Orlando, Florida. And there's a lot of activity. There's been a lot of activity before, and there's probably going to be a lot of trades and maybe some deals done this week. So we're just going to go right into it. So first and foremost, we're going to start with our weekly rant. So again, it will be just be me hosting since Doug and Chris are both out. So it will just be my rant for this week. And I want to talk about this lockout drama that's going to be happening or will likely happen within the next year or so, and how actually it's not really seeming to affect the free agency market. So let's talk about that very quickly. So before this year's free agency or hot stove period, one of the things that was being uh, really just being considered or really being thought about was whether or not there would be concerns that the market would be seeing very slow activity regarding long-term contracts, trades, etc. There was going to be there was some real concern that this market would be very sluggish, wouldn't really move as much, kind of like what happened in the 2020-2021 off season, where you saw a bunch of one-year deals, not very long contracts, maybe a few trades here and there, but nothing really significant. That was due to the fact that it seemed like that the sport was already heading towards a lockout because of the collective bargaining agreement. And if you've been living under a rock with regards to that, the CBA this year will expire, or this current CBA, excuse me, will expire on December 1st, 2026. So a little less than a year. So there's a lot of concern with regards to that. There's a lot of worry about how long that might go. But again, still a year away. Negotiations still have to take place. But we really haven't been seeing a lot of drama or a lot of hindrance with this market. Let's really be clear. Uh, we've seen a good amount of multi-year deals and some trades even with regards to the reliever market. And that includes that humongous 7-year, $210 million deal between Dylan Cease and the Toronto Blue Jays, which we will get into in a moment. We also saw some trades. We also did see, of course, 2 weeks ago, right before that week's show, the Brandon Nimmo, Marcus Semien trade, which honestly didn't really make a lot of sense. But we've also seen a good amount of trades. We've also seen a lot of activity with regards to whether or not Tariq Skubal will be traded. Again, that's all going to be discussed later in the show. But we're seeing a good amount of activity, thankfully, and it might give a little bit of hope for some baseball fans because, again, the consensus was that if there wasn't a lot of activity during this year's hot stove or to start with the hot stove, you wouldn't see you might see a lockout. Again, you might still see a lockout in 2026, but maybe there's a little bit of some optimism in the air. Maybe the owners are suggesting that maybe the lockout won't be as long or as consequential with regards to the sport. So again, we also did see another large deal with Josh Naylor and the Seattle Mariners, 5-year deal, $25 million AAV. We also again saw notable trades. Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward on a shocking 1-for-1 trade between the Baltimore Orioles and the Los Angeles Angels. We saw Sonny Gray head off to Boston, and we did see Harry Ford, Seattle's one of Seattle's top prospects, be shipped to the Washington Nationals for Jose Ferrer, who is a mid-tier reliever. Very interesting, but again, we'll get into all of that. But again, the main overarching point of the rant is that it does seem like that signs are pointing that maybe, just maybe, these owners and the players union, or at least the owners are thinking that maybe this lockout won't be as bad as they expected because again, we did see two quite significant deals, very long-term deals be signed within the last week or so. We also do have, talk about whether or not Zach Allen's going to sign with the Cubs, which again, get into a little later. But again, there's a lot of activity. This is not a dead market. And you would think with a lockout possibly impending, with a potential impact of the regular season next year or in 2027, excuse me, you're not really seeing a lot of fear. There's real no gauge of fear. There's no sense of urgency. There's no real sense of panic. It seems just business as usual. Now, again, that might be that might be smoke and mirrors a little bit. Is there some optimism in the air? Possibly. But again, maybe the long lockout might not happen. You'll likely still see a lockout that may knock a good amount of the winter off, but you'll likely it may last as long as 2021, maybe 90 days, maybe cut off a little bit of some spring training, and of course that's also due to the fact that the Players Association for the MLB is currently under federal investigation. Now, if you're not familiar with that, the MLBPA is currently under again, federal investigation for potential misuse of funds with regards to a youth mentoring program. I don't remember off the top of my head, but essentially they are looking into whether funds were misappropriated from the Players Association to this particular program that held very few events, didn't really help anything, and just seemed to be a cash grab. Now, again, still early into the investigation. We don't know exactly what the impact will be, but it seems like that there might be an impact, at least down the line, depending on what happens with that investigation. And that could spell big news, really bad news for Tony Clark, who is the head of the MLBPA. So again, we'll see what happens. But for right now, it seems like it's business as usual. There's kind of a little bit of excitement in the air. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of months. Now, again, most of these negotiations will not happen. A lot of these negotiations with regards to the CBA will not happen until spring training, start of the regular season, and will likely intensify as the deadline approaches. But we'll see what happens. There might be a little bit of some cautious optimism in the air, but again, still very early in that process, still very early and with regards to what might happen. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So getting into the crux of the broadcast this evening, the winter meetings again are kicking off today. This year's meetings are being held in Orlando, Florida. It's happening today until December 11th. A lot of free agents are remaining on the table. There are discussions about trades and extensions. A lot of them. You might be looking on X, you might be looking on Facebook, you might be looking on YouTube with regards to who might be moving, what might the next moves be, where players might go, where they might land, how much. Is it going to be a good contract? Is it going to be a bad contract? Well, unfortunately, a lot of it's still speculation. A lot of it is still just talk, and a lot of it's still up in the air. And again, there's still a lot of gauging with the market. But it seems like that there are at least floors and ceilings being put into place with regards to what contracts might go for. So before we really get into the crux of that, I will take the liberty of going over both Doug, Chris's, and my teams and how their off seasons have been so far. So starting off with the Blue Jays, they have been relatively active in the starter market. So, of course, bringing back what we alluded to earlier and at the start of the broadcast, about last week, the Blue Jays signed Dylan Cease, who is arguably one of the top tier free agent starting pitchers. 7 years, $210 million. I believe that there were some deferrals in there, but that essentially is the equivalent of $30 million per year. Big contract, the biggest contract by far issued this very young and early free agency cycle, hot stove. Now, here's the thing. This might be probably a very, very risky move by the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, don't get me wrong. Dylan Cease is a great pitcher. He is known to be very good. In 2022 with the Chicago White Sox, he
He was dominant. 2.2 ERA, 14-8 record, had a complete game shutout. I believe he had a no-hitter that year, actually. It was either him or Carlos Rodon. I'm not quite sure. Did have issues with walks. He threw a league leading 78 walks that year. He also struck out 227 people, or batters, excuse me. He also kept his home run rate below 1 per 9 innings. In 2024, he did the same thing. Now, his numbers were a little bit more inflated. 3.47 ERA, 224 strikeouts for 190 innings pitched. Also had a complete game shutout. Wasn't a no-hitter, but through a league-leading 33 games started, and he was a workhorse. He was a great workhorse. He's been a workhorse for the last 5 years. Really hasn't missed any time to injury. Has started more than 30 games in the last 5 years. Really good pickup by the Blue Jays, especially with some of that rotation aging, especially when it comes to Max Scherzer, because again, he is 41. I don't know if he'll be back with the Blue Jays, and if he is, how effective will he be? Now, the downside to Cease's contract is that there are times where he is not very good. In 2025, he had a down year. He was 8-12 with a 4.55 ERA. Again, through 32 games, started 32 games, easily marking the 5th straight year with 30 or more games started. Did see a dip in his production. Did see an increase in his walk rate from 3.1 last year to 3.8 per 9 innings. He did lead the league in strikeouts per 9 innings at 11.5. But his whip also increased from 1.07 in 2024 to 1.33 in 2025. And we did see a small uptick in his home run rate from 0.9 per 9 innings in 24 to 1.1 in 2025. The question is, what type of pitcher are the Blue Jays going to get? Are they going to get the 2022, 2024 Dylan Cease, or are they going to get the 2025 Dylan Cease? Now, again, he's a very good pitcher, has a really good arsenal. And the Blue Jays need diversity in that rotation. Again, don't forget, that rotation was quite old, unfortunately. I hate to say it like that. But again, Max Scherzer is going to be 41. Chris Bassett would be 37 next year. Gausman's going to be 35. So they do need a little bit of some youth. And Dylan Cease does bring youth and experience alongside, of course, Eric Lauer, who's also 30, and the emerging Trey Savage. Now, again, the question is, which one will they get? That's going to be a really interesting one. That's going to be a very interesting question. And again, we're going to see exactly what happens, especially in spring training. Because again, there's 2 Dylan Ceases. There's the one in 2022 and there's the one in 2025. Now, to kind of quell some of those concerns, the Blue Jays also signed Cody Ponce. Now, if you're not familiar with Cody Ponce, he pitched for the Pirates back in 2021, and then he went to Japan in 2022 before going to Korea between 2023 and 2025. This year, this past season, he won the Korean League MVP. 17-1 with a 1.89 ERA and 252 strikeouts and 180 and 2/3 innings pitched. Now, again, the caveat is that the KBO is completely different from the MLB, and the hitting philosophy is completely different. Now, this was a 3-year, $30 million deal, so about $10 million a year, which is a respectable contract. That might help quell some of the concerns or might help take some of the pressure off of Dylan Cease, because again, Dylan Cease is going into this Blue Jays organization that just lost a World Series, that just lost a World Series in heartbreaking fashion. I'm sorry to bring that up, Toronto Blue Jays fans, but it was a really bad heartbreak, a really bad one. But when you look at when you really look at his numbers in the MLB, Cody Ponce's numbers in 2021 at least, he was not really good. Nearly dead last in ERA, dead last in batting average allowed, and dead last in OPS. Now, again, that was 4 years ago. 4 years is a long time. And again, when you're coming off of a Korean League MVP win, you're riding really high. So we'll see exactly what happens. But again, Eric Fedde was the last player to come out of Korea when starting in the MLB. Merrill Kelly is another one that started in the MLB, then went to Korea, and then came back and pitched relatively well. So we'll see exactly what happens. So you'll have a rotation of Gosman, Cease, Shane Bieber, Trey Savage, and more than likely Cody Ponce if he does do relatively well and wins that fifth rotation spot. If not, Eric Lauer will likely take that spot. But we'll see where he fits. We'll see exactly where he fits. But Blue Jays are currently starting off relatively hot. Not sure what they're going to do with Bo Bichette. Not sure what they're going to do with their lineup. Not sure what they're going to do with regards to some of the holes in their lineup. But we'll see what happens. Again, second base is still open, maybe. Third base with Addison Barger. I still think Addison Barger will likely have that down, but let's see if they go for a utility player to help back up. And if they do lose Bo Bichette, who might they go for? Maybe they trade for Cody Seager. But again, we'll get to that in a little bit. Now moving on to the Boston Red Sox. They've also been a little busy. The first move this year was trading for Sonny Gray from the St. Louis Cardinals in exchange for left-handed pitcher Brandon Clark and right-handed pitcher Richard Fitz. Big trade in terms of monetary value. This is a large contract that the Boston Red Sox are taking on this year. Sonny Gray's contract is $36 to $38 million per year for 2026 alone. And they're still going to have to deal with that contract for at least the next 2 years. Well, actually, 2027, it's $30 million. Their payroll, there's actually a little bit of a deferment for 2026. It's not 30 million, but it is $11 million this year. So they do save a little bit, but then it jumps to $30 million. So this is a really interesting trade. Now, again, there's one thing I do want to mention with regards to the Red Sox. This doesn't take them out of the Tariq Skubal conversation, which again, we'll also get to later in the show. But why do I say that now? Well, they still have Garrett Crochet. They still have Brian Bello, who is relatively good. And of course, Crochet was, I believe, either a runner-up or a third-place winner for the Cy Young this year in the American League. But outside of that, they also need a third pitcher. They do need some depth. Sonny Gray does provide that. And again, that team is also losing Lucas Giolito. Giolito will likely not be back, and he'll likely get a nice offer somewhere else. So that's mainly to supplement or at least take some of the pain off of losing Lucas Giolito, who really was absent mainly in 2024 because, again, he was coming off of Tommy John surgery, came back to a relatively strong 2025. So they do have at least a core three: Crochet, Bello, and Gray now, who, again, was a former Yankee, too. Now, they also have Connolly Early that they could plug into that rotation. They have Peyton Toll as well. And they do have a couple of other pitchers that they might go for. So we'll see what happens, but don't be surprised if something else happens during the winter meetings with regards to the Red Sox. And again, they also made another trade with the Pirates. They did also bring in some more pitching as well, likely for the bullpen. They traded away their MLB's number 81 prospect, Just Nixon Garcia, and also another prospect, Jesus Treviso, for Johan Oviedo, right-handed pitcher, and lefty Tyler Samanigo, and also a backup catcher at Naldanis Guzman. Another small trade, nothing really significant here, but this is going to be a really interesting trade for the Pirates, which we'll get to again later in the show. But it seems like the Red Sox are really trying to shore up their bullpen. They really want to get some guys in that bullpen to help out with Aroldis Chapman, who had a dominant 2025, and he was great. I mean, there's a reason why he was either won or was very close to winning reliever of the year. And again, a 1.17 ERA with 85 strikeouts and 61 innings pitched. He went back to his youth form after a tumultuous tenure with the Yankees and some quiet years with both the Rangers and the Royals. So it seems like that the Boston Red Sox are really trying to shore up either A, their rotation, or B, their bullpen for possibly 2026 and beyond that. Because right now, their rotation or their lineup, excuse me, is almost complete. They do have some holes, but again, we'll get to that soon. But again, you do have third base with Alex Bregman possibly leaving. You do have an issue at first base. You do have Christian Campbell, who struggled. So there's some holes that still need to be addressed with the Red Sox. But again, it's still very early. Still very early in the free agency hot stove cycle. So some things might happen at the winter meetings that we may not know about. So again, now with my team, the Yankees, and I just helped publish an article on Stadium Rants this morning, actually, with regards to the Yankees' off-season plans. So, with regards to that, and if you're a Yankee fan for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you know everything about the boss, George Steinbrenner. Loved to spend, would throw insane amounts of money at any player that he could possibly get. He wanted to build the best possible team by throwing as much money as possible to fix a problem. And that went on for pretty much the entirety of his tenure as chairman or the owner of the Yankees. And of course, he did help build a dynasty in the late 90s and the early 2000s with regards to that. Very successful teams. One of the most notable dynasties within the last 30, 40 years of all professional sports. Passed away in 2010, unfortunately. His son, Hal, took the reins. Hal's been more fiscally conservative than his father by a large margin, a very large difference. And it's been talked about that the Yankees are not going to spend a lot on this offseason, despite the amount of talent and the holes that they have. They are looking to keep their payroll under $300 million, which is unheard of for the Yankees. A salary cap, a payroll cap for the Yankees. How is that possible? How is that even going to happen? Well, for starters, the Yankees right now have a payroll of about $250 million when you factor in every single contract and projected arbitration. You have Judge's $40 million a year contract. You have Cole's $36 million a year contract. You have Fried's 25 to 30 million a year contract, maybe a little more, and you have Rodon's 27 million a year. That's over $100 million in those 5 players alone. That's a lot of money. And when you look at the long-term payroll for the Yankees, the next time they have any real meaningful room to move in terms of their payroll would be the end of the 2027 season, when some of those contracts start falling off. Stanton's contract falls off. And then in 2028, Aaron or Garrett Cole's contract falls off. Carlos Rodon's contract might fall off. 2029, Aaron Judge's $40 million contract falls off. So they have a lot of time before they have any meaningful room. And that's going to hurt because we know that Hal Steinbrenner does not like to spend. Now, there's been some debate with regards to that. John Heyman came out and said that he doesn't believe the Yankees will stay under $300 million. I also believe that. I don't believe that there is a conceivable world that the Yankees stay under $300 million. But with regards to that, don't count that out. They do need to have, they have very few options to maneuver with regards to that. Of course, you can't move a lot of these players. You could move Rodon if you wanted to. You could possibly move Jazz Chisholm, which would knock about $12 million off of your payroll. You could possibly move Anthony Volpe, but that would only be $3 million. You could ship away Camilo Doval for $5.5 million. But there's not a lot of room to navigate. And again, you need batters in your lineup because you are at risk of losing Cody Bellinger, who is your second best or second most productive hitter in that entire Yankee lineup. 5.1 WAR with a 272 batting average, 813 OPS, almost 30 home runs, 57 walks and 90 strikeouts, 160 hits. Very good hitter, very talented hitter. We know this. He's won the MVP before with the Dodgers. You can't really afford to lose him and then replace him with nothing. And then again, if you do lose him, who's going to replace him? Grisham? Do you really think Grisham is going to have the same year that he did in 2025? He had a great year. Don't get me wrong. 34 home runs is nothing to sneeze at. 811 OPS is nothing to sneeze at. But is he able to keep that up? And then you have the question of Jason Dominguez. And then the question of whether or not he's ready to come up to the MLB and whether he's ready to perform. Then you have the question of Spencer Jones as well. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to be thrust into the major league level? What about Aaron Judge? What's going to happen with him when when he's not able to play right field, unfortunately, and you lose out on Cody Bellinger for a couple of years. You lose out on Kyle Tucker for a couple of years. There's a lot of questions about the construction of this roster. There's a lot of constructions. There's a lot of questions on whether or not this roster can replicate a 94-win team. It can't without Bellinger. It can't without maybe another contact bat in there. You do have Ben Rice. You do have maybe Austin Wells. You do have Ryan McMahon, whose bat is not great, but his defense is impeccable. Then you have your rotation, which again, you have Cam Schlittler, who's emerging. You'll get Cole back. You'll get Rodon back a month into the season. You do have Fried. You do have some other pitchers down in the minor leagues. Rodriguez Cruz is one. Ben Hess might be another. Cunningham is another. But you do need at least a little bit more veteran presence and maybe a little bit more of a established pitcher in that rotation, possibly. Because you do have one other rotation spot. Schmidt's not coming back until 2027. You're not quite sure about Will Warren. Luis Gil's having control issues all over the place. So who's going to be your number 5 starter? Are you going to call somebody up for a month and then send them back down? What's the plan? What's going to happen? So there's a lot of questions with regards to the Yankees. There's a lot of questions with regards to what they might do. Are they going to make a large move at the winter meetings? I don't know. I'm not sure. I've heard conflicting reports that they won't be there, and then they will be there, and then they won't be there, and then they will be there. We'll see what happens. Now, don't get me wrong, the Yankees can easily win 90 games. But this city is desperately clamoring for a championship. They want to win a World Series. They have not won a World Series in almost 17 years. And I think Hal Steinbrenner needs to spend. I think there's no conceivable way, like I said, that the Yankees stay under 300 million in terms of a payroll. You need to spend. You need to keep Bellinger. You might need to get another established starter, possibly for your number 5 spot, or to move into the 3rd spot and bump Schlittler to the 5 spot. But you don't really have a lot of options. You really can't say no to another bat. And if you do have maybe some room after that, or maybe some room to navigate, maybe you get a low-tier pitcher, maybe you get a low-tier starter. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of questions about what the Yankees are going to do. They could easily lose both Bellinger and lose out on the opportunity to get Tucker and lose out on the ability to get Tatsuya Imai, who I think is better of a pitcher or could be a better pitcher than Framber Valdez. I know it's a very hot take, but Tatsuya Imai was really, really good in Japan. Now, again, like I said with the KBO, baseball in Asia, in terms of, the dynamics of the game and aerodynamics are a lot different than the MLB when it comes to ballparks. We'll see what happens. Oh, hey, Tatsuya Imai. I love how I just name dropped and suddenly there's a person by the name of Tatsuya Imai that's popped up here. How are you doing? But just continuing on with regards to that. We'll see what happens with the Yankees. We'll see exactly what happens. Do I think the Yankees not acquire any one of the 3? I don't think so. I think Bellinger is the likeliest one, but I don't think they're going to go and get Imai if they get Bellinger. I think it's a stretch. They might go for maybe a stopgap option, whether it be a very small free agency acquisition or maybe calling somebody up from AAA to pitch for that month or two and then send them back down. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's going to be a very hectic and nerve wracking couple of months for Yankee fans like myself. So buckle up. Buckle up, Yankee fans. Now, getting to the second half of the broadcast. Now, again, with the winter meetings kicking off, we now have to go into who might be buying, who might be spending, who goes where. Are there going to be any trades that might happen that might surprise all of us? We'll see what happens. But there are a couple of teams you might need to watch in terms of who might make the most moves or who might, pull off a large signing or trade during the winter meetings. Now, with regards to buyers, these are the teams that are going to acquire a lot of players during this offseason that want to fix their rosters, that want to try to, make a shot at the playoffs, maybe make a shot at the World Series, try to do something, try to get anything that they possibly can. The first team I have on my list with regards to that are the Baltimore Orioles. Now, the Baltimore Orioles have enormous room to maneuver in their payroll. They have a lot of room. When you combine all of their arbitration and their current contracts with Tyler O'Neill's $16 million contract, with Ryan Helsley's new contract of $14 million a year, they only have about 50 to 60 million allocated in terms of just that alone. When you factor in arbitration, that's more like 90 million to 100 million. They have room to move. And Mike Elias has come out and hinted that they want to go higher this year. They want to go more knee deep into the free agency market and get some players. They already showed it by, again, getting Ryan Helsley off the free agency market, trading for Taylor Ward to try and at least get something going in their rotation, anything to go and just take off. They still need a solid rotation because, again, the best piece of the rotation is Taylor Rogers. That's your best pitcher. Dean Kremer, is your second best pitcher. That's not going to cut it in the AL East. I'm sorry, Trevor Rogers, excuse me. They can easily pull off signings for Framber Valdez and Ranger Suarez, or Tatsuya Imai as a dark horse candidate. In an ideal world, they could pull the move off for all three and still have at least enough room to maybe make a signing for one other impact bat. But I still believe that they will focus on their rotation. Their rotation is not very good. They will likely try to get Framber Valdez. They will likely try to go for Ranger Suarez. They will likely try to go for Tatsuya Imai. They will likely try to go for any single starting pitcher under the sun. Chris Bassett, Michael King, Zach Gallen, maybe Zach Littell, possibly. They're not going to bring back Zach Eflin. They're not going to bring back Tomoyuki Shigano. They're likely not going to go for Justin Verlander. They might likely go for Lucas Giolito, too. There's a lot of moves. I haven't heard anything about the Orioles trading for Tariq Skubal yet, but maybe that could happen. Maybe it could happen. Maybe it won't happen. But again, when you look at what they also have, a trade for Tariq Skubal from the Orioles is really hard to pull off. They want the Tigers would likely want players now and for the future. That would likely require moving Samuel Basallo. That would likely require moving Dylan Beavers. That could possibly require moving Adley Rutschman. Maybe moving Jackson Holiday. Any young player would be on the block to be traded. And I don't think the Orioles are going to give up too much. I don't think they want to. They'll likely stick with the free agency market in terms of starting pitching. That's where I believe it's going to really be the most prevalent that the Orioles are. Some other teams that I do have pegged as buyers this year. The Los Angeles Angels. Why the Los Angeles Angels? Well, they do have a very small budget. They don't really have a lot of room to maneuver because of Mike Trout's contract and Anthony Rendon's contract, which has turned out to be possibly the worst in MLB history with the injuries and the character issues, all that stuff. The Angels, from my understanding, are trying to buy out Anthony Rendon's contract and just get him out of Los Angeles for good. He has not been very good in terms of playing. He has been essentially very prima donna when it comes to his attitude. And I think the Angels really want to move on from him. They don't want to stick around. They don't want to waste their payroll. So they're going to try to buy him out. They might buy him out. We're not sure yet. But if they do buy him out, that opens up a ton of room for them. That opens about $35 million this year for payroll space. That's a lot of money. And you're starting to see them make some small deals that maybe signifies that they want to try to move on from Anthony Rendon, maybe make some smaller trades to try to help fill out the rotation, possibly. Grayson Rodriguez from the Orioles, which is a very risky trade given Rodriguez's injury history. You also did sign Alek Manoah to try and get him back up to speed after just 2 years of disaster after his great 2022 campaign. Likely they're not going to pull off a large haul, but they might make the most noise in terms of quantity. They might make some small signings here and there. I don't expect them to make a very large signing. If they do, it would be likely for a mid-level bat. Nothing like Cody Bellinger, nothing like Kyle Tucker. Maybe Ha-Seong Kim, maybe Paul DeJong. I don't think Eugenio Suarez would be there. Maybe for the outfield, maybe they might go for Miguel Andujar or Harrison Bader. Maybe JJ Bleday is one. Maybe trying to get Randall Grichuk as a utility outfielder. We'll see. But they could possibly be active. The New York Mets are another team I have as buyers, and who wouldn't at this point? I mean, Steve Cohen loves to throw around money. He is the Mets version of George Steinbrenner. They so badly need rotation help. That rotation was awful last year. That doesn't include Griffin Canning's Achilles injury. That doesn't include the fact that Sean Manaea missed half the season. That doesn't mention that Tyler McGill missed half the season as well. Just a really bad season in terms of the Mets rotation. And they're also losing Pete Alonso possibly this year. So they have two areas that they need to address: first base and starting pitching. Now, with starting pitching, you can possibly rely on Nolan McLean, maybe rely on Jonah Tong, maybe rely on one other starting pitcher in your field or sorry, I'm having a blank, in your farm system. That's what I'm trying to say. Brandon Sproat is another one. I believe that they will try to bring in maybe one or two veteran pitchers. They will definitely pursue Framber Valdez. They will likely pursue Tatsuya Imai. They will likely pursue Shota Imanaga from the Cubs. There is a good chance that they walk away with one big starting pitcher and then call up Tong and McLean for 2026 and see how that goes. They could, again, also get Tatsuya Imai because, again, that rotation is in need of pitching. Kodai Senga, good pitcher, can't stop getting hurt, though. That's another thing. Clay Holmes, so on and so forth. Did well in terms of just starting out as a starting pitcher, but collapsed through the second half of the year. David Peterson, who was your frontline starter, arguably, didn't pitch well. You need a lot. And then when it comes to replacing the production from Pete Alonso, you're going to need to really get 2 or 3 bats if you don't re-sign Pete Alonso. And don't look now, but the Orioles are a good position. I'm going to make a very interesting prediction here. The Orioles might be in very good standing in a very good spot to steal Pete Alonso off of the free agency market. His market has been very quiet. You haven't heard a lot of talk about it. There is a good chance that the Orioles swoop in and steal Pete Alonso. And if that happens, you're going to have to find a first baseman quick. That might be Munetaka Murakami, possibly. That might be Kazuma Okamoto. That could also possibly be a combination of maybe, just maybe, Ryan O'Hearn and maybe another infielder or outfielder bat, or possibly bringing back Dominic Smith and then getting 2 outfield bats. We'll see what happens. You do have some good prospects in the minors. You have Jet Williams. You have Carson Benj. You have AJ Ewing, who will likely be called up maybe sometime next year. Ryan Clifford as a first base outfielder position. You have players, but they're not going to replace Pete Alonso. That's the thing. They will be active on every single free agent in the first base and starting pitching market this time around. I also have the Cubs possibly as buyers as well, despite the fact that they'll likely lose Imanaga, maybe more than likely lose Kyle Tucker. They will absolutely try to get talent. Now, the reason why they'll try to let Tucker go is because they want to give one of their top prospects, Kevin Alcantara, who consistently ranked high up on that on the Cubs farm system, a chance to really shine at the big league level. He's likely ready, very likely ready. Now, with regards to the Cubs the Cubs rotation and lineup, they have a really good lineup. Actually, they have Carson Kelly, they have Pete Crow Armstrong, who needs a bounce back here after his disastrous September. You still have Seiya Suzuki, you still have Ian Happ, Matt Shaw, you have Dansby Swanson. You have a good amount on your lineup. You might want to bring in another pitcher or two. Likely not Valdez, likely not Ranger Suarez, not like those guys. Maybe 2 mid-tier starters, possibly. Maybe they go for Eric Fetty, who's back on the market. Maybe they do go for Lucas Giolito. Maybe they go for Albert Suarez. Maybe they go for Aaron Zaval. Maybe they go for Marcus Stroman, possibly. We'll see what happens. But they'll likely go for their rotation. On the flip side, I do have the Giants as well, possibly looking for a rotation and bullpen help. Don't forget that rotation is very, very thin for the Giants. Verlander is going to hit 43 if you bring him back. Logan Webb and Robbie Ray are your 2 start pitchers. Landon Rope pitched decent, but also had some issues with, keeping hits down and keeping them low. There are issues. There are serious issues in that lineup, or not the lineup, the rotation, and serious issues with the bullpen. They'll be active on the pitching front, both starter and reliever. They need a third and a number 3 and 4 rotation piece. They will likely need a closer. They will likely need a reliever. They will likely spend in that department. With regards to their rotation, with regards to their lineup, that's likely not going to be touched. That's going to likely remain the same. They might go for middle infield support at second base. Maybe they get IKF. We'll see what happens. But they need infield support. Now, moving on. We are looking also at the spenders. These will be the teams that will be the most likely to trade during the winter meetings and then beyond. So I do also have five teams that I believe will be big time traders or possibly looking to make a very large trade or trades during the winter meetings. The first team I have, believe it or not, would be the Philadelphia Phillies. That is my hometown team. I'm based out of Philly, and a lot of Philly fans are not going to like that. But I believe that the time or their current championship window is closing or has closed. Muto will likely not come back. Bryce Harper is getting old. Castellanos had a really bad season. Schwarber will likely not be back. There's a lot of teams vying for his services. You still have Trey Turner. You still have maybe Brandon Marsh. You do have Justin Crawford as a prospect. You do have Andrew Painter, and you have Aiden Miller, all coming up the pipeline soon. Their stores are aging, and they might be not as effective. They could easily or possibly make big time trades to get rid of Bryce Harper for prospects to rebuild their lineup. At the same time, they might trade or might try to sign one other starting pitcher because they will likely lose Ranger Suarez this season or this offseason. That could be Tatsuya Imai. That could be Framber Valdez. I don't think it's going to be Valdez, but you never know. I think Dombrowski loves to do a lot of surprise moves in terms of the world of baseball. But they could also go for, again, maybe Chris Bassett, maybe steal Michael King from the Padres, maybe be the team that Zach Gallen signs with, maybe bring in Merrill Kelly for leadership or possibly some veteran presence or a stable support for their rotation. We'll see what happens. But they will likely make some trades and also spend some money with regards to that. But it'll likely be through trades, possibly. The Padres. I also have the Padres up here. AJ Preller loves to trade away prospects. Loves to trade away prospects. Really loves to try to field a championship team by depleting his whole farm system, rebuilding it, and then doing the same thing over a couple of years later. Has not worked out. Last year, during the trade deadline, traded for Freddie Fermin, traded for Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, and Mason Miller on top of a couple other players. They did not get far in the playoffs. And the reason is because their lineup is not as good as people think that it is, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but it is not. Outside of Fernando Tatis, outside of maybe Manny Machado, really hasn't been a great time in San Diego. Machado had a down year. Tatis Jr. arguably had a down year. Didn't really have a lot of that firepower, but he still hit pretty good, 814 OPS. Bogarts had a down year. Ramon Laureano, who was your trade deadline acquisition, was your second best hitter on that team, which shows how bad that lineup was. And they are unfortunately in a really big, really precarious situation with regards to who they might try to get. Because they don't have a very deep farm system anymore. Their farm system is essentially gone. Would they possibly trade Ethan Salas? They might, but unfortunately, he's not performing really well, and he's injured. They might trade away Cash Mayfield. They might try to trade away Humberto Cruz, some of their pitchers. They might make one trade to try to get a bat in that lineup or to try to help stop the bleeding in the rotation if they lose, because they've already lost Dylan Cease. They might lose Michael King. Michael King could possibly be going after when all said and done with the hot stove. So they're in a bad situation. They'll likely try to spend whatever they can in their farm system, whatever's left, to try and get a pitcher or two. I don't think that they're going to, sign a big time free agent. They will likely just try to scrap out the trade market and see what they can get to try to plug in those holes. Now, I also do have the Brewers and the Rangers. Now, I've talked about the Rangers before. They want to cut payroll. It almost seemed like they did for the Nimmo and Marcus Semien trade, but it was kind of an even one-for-one trade. Maybe it went down a couple $1 million their payroll, but not too much. They are still maybe looking to trade Corey Seager, and I've talked about him previously on the show. He will likely not be a Yankee, but I think that there are teams that will be inquiring about his services. Likely inquiring about his services. DeGrom might be on the move, possibly. Nathan Eovaldi will likely be on the move. Because Nathan Eovaldi is a very good pitcher. Everybody seems to overlook him. Could he possibly be in a reunion with the Red Sox? Maybe. Could there possibly be a shock trade between the Brewers and the Rangers? Possibly. Now, that segues into the Brewers. they've been listed as serious trade candidates with regards to Freddie Peralta. He's entering his last year of free agency. They will likely want to capitalize on that. I don't know if they have the budget or the payroll to extend a contract to him after 2026. So if they can't, you might want to trade him now. Yankees have been paired with him. I think the Rangers could possibly organize a trade that could blow the socks off of everybody with regards to Freddie Peralta. Maybe they trade Freddie Peralta with their top prospect, Sebastian Walcott, maybe Nathan Eovaldi, and maybe a reliever or two. Maybe, possibly. We'll see what happens. But the Brewers could likely trade at the winter meetings. And Freddie Peralta is the likeliest to go. Now, I also have the Pirates as potential traders this year. Why do I have the Pirates as traders this year? Well, I don't think they want to let Steens walk in a couple of years. And I think they know that they have to build a team around him, a very strong lineup to give him run support for when he is pitching, and also build a rotation around him. Now you are getting Jared Jones back from injury. You will have Bubba Chandler being called up and likely pitching every 5 days or so for 2026. Hunter Barco will likely be called up and might start at some point in 2026. Seth Hernandez, which is one of your top 3 prospects, will likely be ready to go in the next couple of years. Which also, on the flip side, you do have Connor Griffin, who is the number 1 prospect in the major leagues, had a great 2025. Low A, high A, double A, all hit 900 OPS, every single level. And I personally believe that the Pirates may trade away Seth Hernandez, maybe Hunter Barco, or maybe flip Justinson Garcia, for players. Or they'll likely sign a free agent or two. Kyle Schwarber's been connected with the Pirates. That is a possibility. I don't think it might happen. I think they'll lose to the Reds because don't forget, the Reds are a hometown team to Schwarber. And the Reds also do have kind of almost the same amount of payroll and payroll space that the Pirates have. They will likely outbid them. But I believe that the Pirates will likely make trades to get a second baseman up the middle infield. Likely try to trade away O'Neal Cruz because he's not been very good. They could possibly look to trade Kip Brian Hayes away. I think they actually did, they traded him away to Cincinnati. They might trade away or try to trade away Henry Davis because he's not been panning out at all. They might even try to retrade Brian Reynolds, and we know that a couple of years ago he was on the trade market. They might put him back on the trade market. That's mainly just to try to build a younger, more high-ceiling team around Paul Skeens. Because right now, the rotation seems to be getting set, at least within the next year or two. Maybe they go and pick up a low-level, mid-level starting rotation piece. That could happen. But they will likely make trades during the winter meetings or after that for bats. And that will more than likely include Seth Hernandez or Hunter Barco as one of the 2 candidates to be traded. And that will likely net them a pretty nice haul, possibly, for their rotation or for their lineup, Now, just finishing up our show for tonight, I wanted to circle back to Tarik Skubal because there's been some talk with regards to whether or not Tarik Skubal would be traded. There have been talks that he might be traded, he might not be traded. Well, before the show, from my understanding, there was a report that came out that suggested that the Tigers would listen to offers with regards to Tarik Skubal. They will likely listen to any offers that might be of consideration. They'll think about it. and then they'll make a decision. Will Tariq Skubal be traded during the winter meetings? More than likely not, but there is a non-zero chance. Why is there a non-zero chance? Well, there are teams that have the prospect capacity and player capacity to do so because the Tigers will likely want players. They will likely want young players for their lineup. You know, try and help out Riley Green, try and help out Spencer Torkelson, help some of those guys out because they do have holes. They do have a hole at shortstop, and they're not sure with regards to Kevin McGonigal. McGonigal has not played in a game yet in the major league level. They'll likely need a center fielder and a right fielder. The Mets have outfielder prospects. They have Jet Williams. They have Carson Bench. They can absolutely make a trade centering around those two players and more than likely Jonah Tong and make a trade for Tariq Skubal. That's one option. The Boston Red Sox might also look to trade for Tariq Skubal. They might just say, you know what? We don't need Peyton Toll, or we might just get rid of Connolly early to get the gold now because we did get to the wild card. We almost knocked out the Yankees. So we'll try to do that. They also do have a relatively not significantly deep, but a deep enough farm system to work with. They have Franklin Arias, 2027 call up, possibly. Young shortstop that would possibly help out Kevin McGonigal at second base if they decide to move on for Gleyber Torres in the future. 20 years old, had a 726 OPS, a down year, but he still has a pretty good tool set. They also could possibly trade away Peyton Toll, maybe trade away Connolly early. Tyson Witherspoon, which was their recent draft pick this year, their first round draft pick. They have some of the goods. They don't really have an outfield prospect, so that might more than likely might make them part with an outfielder prospect or an outfielder currently. That could possibly be Wilyer Abreu. That could likely be Jarren Duran. That could also be Roman Anthony. There could be a making of a really nice trade there, especially with very lucrative players like that for the Tigers, because they need help in that outfield. They need help. Parker Meadows and Wenzel Perez are not great hitters. They need to look at that. They need to really think about that. And then when you also look at who might be inquiring about their services and trying to secure them for the long term, of course, the Mets will likely make a offer, maybe try to extend a call. Don't count out. I would say do not count out Phillies, possibly. Don't count them out because they do have Crawford, like I mentioned, and Crawford is one of the top outfielder prospects in the majors or in MLB in general. They also do have Andrew Painter, who they could likely get rid of because they might not be sure with his arm coming off of Tommy John, and he's really rocky coming off of that. Now, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but they could probably organize something around those two players and maybe, possibly trade away Brandon Marsh or maybe get rid of Nick Castellanos and see how he does. And Nick Castellanos did play for the Tigers, I believe, at one point, so it would be a homecoming. Familiar territory, familiar team, could be a bonus there. But in all due respect, there is a non-zero chance that Skubal will be traded between now and December 11th, but it's not likely. I think that there's going to be a lot of negotiation before they even consider moving Tariq Skubal. The Tigers consider moving Tariq Skubal. You have to consider, what do you need in your rotation? What do you need in your lineup? And the Tigers, again, need outfielders, and they also need more rotation depth. They will be getting Jackson Joe back. Casey Mize did have a decent year. Reese Olson also did have a decent year before he got injured. So they need some help. I believe that they will look to possibly trade away Tariq Skubal. If they do, for a pair of pitchers, pitching prospects possibly, and then trade for outfielders to bump out Wenzel Perez and Parker Meadows and maybe throw them on the trade block for a starting pitcher. Or if they don't want to trade away Tariq Skubal at this time, maybe, get if push come to shove, if they don't trade Tariq Skubal, they'll likely still be active on the free agency market. They'll likely won't sign, Cody Bellinger or Kyle Tucker. Likely won't go for the big name free agents in terms of starting pitching. They'll likely go for mid tier, but really watch Tariq Skubal. Really watch to see how those contract talks progress. If they don't progress, that chance of him being traded goes up significantly. And expect the Mets, Phillies, and Red Sox to all be part of that alongside other teams. Now, with regard to the Yankees, would they likely trade for Skubal? They would love to get Skubal, but it's unlikely because it would be a very large contract after the fact. So, unfortunately, there's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that need to be considered, a lot of things that are still not settled. But there's a lot of activity, and it's going to be a really, really fun hot stove season. With that being said, we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in on this beautiful but chilly and cold Sunday evening. A lot of moves that still need to be made. We still have a couple of days, 4 days left of the winter meetings. Anything could happen. Anything can happen. Big trades, big free agent signings that nobody expected, dark horse candidates, you name it, it's got it. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe there's a Juan Soto-esque trade, or maybe there's an Aaron Judge-esque free agent signing that blows the doors off of the market and increases everybody's value. We'll see what happens. But it's going to be really, really fun these next couple of days. And I bet you, a lot of fans are going to be happy and a lot of fans are going to be sad. With just the amount of depth in this free agency market. So with that being said, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Dirty Leather with just me, Jesse, myself. Unfortunately, I wish the guys were here. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it tonight, but I hope I was able to entertain you for the last hour and give you some insightful baseball knowledge. So, yeah, we'll see you in the next 2 weeks, and make sure to pay attention to the winter meetings. I think there's going to be a lot of things that happen. I think there's going to be a lot of things that take place. You don't want to miss it. So take care, everybody.